Welcome, weary traveler, to Nightmare True Horror. You seek refuge, perhaps. Or do you, like us, crave the chill that seeps from these roadside purgatories? Tonight, we unlock the doors to 7 rooms, each harboring a tale steeped in genuine dread. 7 true motel horror stories where the peeling paint and flickering lights bear silent witness to unspeakable events. What is it about these anonymous spaces that breeds such terror? Is it the isolation, the knowledge that countless souls have passed through these very walls, leaving behind echoes? Share your darkest motel theories, your own unsettling encounters, in the comments below. Let the collective dread manifest, and if the thought of peeling back the veneer of normalcy to reveal the horrors beneath excites that morbid curiosity within you, ensure you are subscribed, for the doors to Nightmare True Horror are always creaking open, beckoning you to what lies beyond. Prepare yourselves. The neon vacancy sign buzzed like a dying insect. Unset Motel, $49, night. I'd pulled over somewhere between Tulsa and nowhere, my eyes raw from 8 hours of highway hypnosis. The clerk handed me a key to room 12 without looking up from his crossword. 7 down, quiet as a monster. The walls were thinner than a motel towel. Next door, a TV droned infomercials. I flopped onto the bed, springs groaning, and texted my sister. Made it. Kinda sketchy, but cheap. She replied with a snoozing emoji. Then the screaming started. Not horror movie screams, real ones. Wet, guttural, cut short by a crack. The TV went silent. Something heavy thudded against our shared wall, shaking the framed lake painting. I froze, phone slipping into the crack between mattresses, scuffling, a muffled please. Then nothing. My fingers found the phone's flashlight. The peephole showed an empty parking lot. Room 11's door hung ajar, yellow light pooling on asphalt. A shadow moved inside, dragging. The clerk's booth was dark. I dialed 911, whispering, "Sunset Motel, room 11. Someone's hurt. Units en route," the dispatcher said. "Stay put," but room 11's door creaked in the wind. Inside, a lamp cast jagged shadows. A suitcase lay open, clothes spilling like entrails. Red droplets trailed to the bathroom. My reflection in the mirror looked greener than the tiles. "Don't touch anything." The shower curtain bulged. Brakes screeched outside. Cops. I ducked behind the dumpster as 2 officers trudged past. Flashlight sweeping. "Again?" one muttered. "Third time this month." They flicked the bathroom light on. The curtain rustled. "Empty," said the taller cop. "Just a raccoon in the tub." No, I'd heard, hadn't I? Back in room 12, the lake painting hung crooked. Behind it, a fist-sized dent. 3 a.m. The ice machine growled. I jolted awake to scraping, metal on concrete. Through the blinds, the clerk wheeled a laundry cart toward a rusted van. A limp hand dangled from the cart's edge, wedding band glinting. My phone lit up. A text from my sister. "You okay?" The van's taillights vanished down the access road. Morning light exposed the stains. Rust-colored streaks on room 11's carpet. A chipped tooth under the bed. The clerk shrugged when I asked about night cleaners. "You dreamin', pal." Checkouts at 11. The receipt had a logo. Sunset Hospitality Group, building community since 1987. Google showed 6 identical motels along Interstate 44. Reviews popped up. "Never stay here. My fiancé disappeared." Cops did nothing. Cops did nothing. A news article from 1992. Missing couple's van found at Sunset Motel. No leads. I called the sheriff. Room 11. "There was a body," he sighed. "Son, we get prank calls nightly. Them meth heads fake screams to scare tourists." The clerk took it in a cart. "Carts for linens. Look." Papers shuffled. "Larry's worked there 20 years. Clean record." But Larry's crossword lay unfinished in the trash. 7 down. Quiet as a grave. I couldn't leave. Not yet. Midnight. Midnight. The van returned. Larry unloaded suitcases. Real ones, not laundry. A family checked in, laughing. Kids clutching pool floats. Room 11's light blinked on. The screaming started at 1:17 a.m. I filmed it this time. The thuds, the dragging, the van leaving, the cops arriving, shrugging. Posted it to Reddit. Our nightmare fuel. Comments flooded in. Fake. Seen this before. Stay in room 11 next to E1DM. They're franchises. Every interstate. Fresh meat for the meat grinder. Attached. A spreadsheet. Names. Dates. Case numbers. My sister called frantic. Where are you? Your video's trending. Larry knocked on my door. Extended stay discount? I'm in room 11 now. The shower curtain sways. They'll say I vanished. They'll say it's a hoax. But you're reading this, aren't you? On your phone. In a cheap motel bed listening. Check the painting. Is it crooked? Driving through Idaho in late fall is beautiful. All wide open skies, fields turning golden brown, mountains blue in the distance. Peaceful. I was on my way to visit family. Just cruising, taking my time. As the sun started to dip, painting the sky in fire and long shadows, I saw the sign for a small town up ahead. Perfect place to stop for the night. Found a motel just off the main road. Didn't look like much. Faded sign. Peeling paint. But the vacancy light was on. Good enough. The lobby was small, smelling of stale coffee and lemon-scented cleaner. A middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a perpetual frown sat behind the counter, watching a tiny TV screen showing a muted game show. Just one for the night, I said, trying to sound cheerful. After a long day of driving, she barely looked up as she grabbed a registration card. Room 9, she said, her voice flat. I took the card, started filling it out. My pen scratched on the thin paper in the quiet room. She spoke again, her voice lower this time, still not looking at me, eyes fixed on the TV. Just so you know. Room 9 had a guest recently. Didn't check out on time. My pen paused. Oh. Everything okay? She finally looked at me. Her tired eyes seemed to hold something else now. A flicker of unease. Yeah. Well, no. Not really. Not really. Didn't leave. Not on his own anyway. The blood drained from my face slightly. My pen felt heavy. What? What do you mean? She gave a short, uncomfortable cough. Look, it was quiet. No fuss. Cleaned up nice. Just, sometimes folks say it feels off. You know? She shrugged, but her eyes darted away again, back to the TV. Last room I got tonight. Take it or leave it. A suicide, an overdose. My mind raced. She was talking about a death in room 9, and she was renting it out? That felt wrong, ghoulish even. My gut screamed leave. Get back in the car. Drive to the next town, no matter how tired I was. But I was exhausted, and it was just a room, cleaned up. What could happen? It wasn't haunted. That was ridiculous. It was just sad. Click. The cheap plastic pen clicked in my suddenly sweaty hand. I'll take it, I heard myself say. The cheap rent probably factored into the decision more than I'd like to admit. She nodded, slid the key card across the counter. Stairs around the back. Second floor, end of the hall. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. I took the key, muttered thanks, and got out of there. The air outside felt cold and clean after the stale office. I found the stairs around the back. They creaked under my weight. The hallway on the second floor was dimly lit, smelling of industrial cleaner. Room doors lined either side, all anonymous, except for room 9 at the very end. It looked just like the others, but knowing made it different, made it feel heavier. I swiped the key card. The light on the door turned green. I pushed it open and stepped inside. It was a standard motel room. 2 double beds, a TV, a dresser, a small table and chairs, a bathroom door. Basic, clean. It smelled strongly of that same lemon cleaner from the lobby, like they'd tried to scrub away more than just dirt. I dropped my bag on the luggage rack. I walked to the bathroom, flipped on the light. Small, sterile, toilet sink, a fiberglass tub shower combo. A large mirror over the sink. Nothing out of the ordinary. Click. The bathroom light switch clicked, unnervingly loud in the quiet room. I closed the bathroom door, pulled the curtain shut over the window, and started to unpack. The room felt cold, colder than it should have been, even for a fall night. A deep, pervasive cold that seemed to sink into your bones. I tried to settle in, flipped on the TV. The sound felt too loud, too cheerful, in the quiet room. I turned it down low, pulled out my laptop, tried to focus on emails, but I kept glancing around the room. at the bathroom door, at the corners of the ceiling. The feeling of being watched was back. Not like someone was outside, but like someone was in here with me. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a Clark story, playing on my mind. Old houses, old motels, they make noises. People die everywhere. It's just tragic, nothing more. But the cold lingered, and the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. Later that night, long after I'd given up on work and turned off the TV trying to sleep, I heard it. A faint sound, coming from the bathroom. Sniffling. My eyes snapped open. I held my breath, listening. More sniffling, and then a soft, muffled sob, coming from inside my bathroom. My heart started to pound. It wasn't the pipes. It wasn't the room next door. This was coming from the bathroom of room 9. My room 9. I slid out of bed slowly, trying not to make a sound. The floor was cold under my bare feet. I crept towards the bathroom door. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. The crying stopped abruptly. Silence. Absolute, chilling silence from behind the door. I stood there for a long minute, straining my ears. Nothing. Had I imagined it? Was I dreaming? The exhaustion? Slowly, I turned the doorknob, pushed the door open, flipped on the light. Empty. The bathroom was empty. The shower curtain was pulled back. No one was there. Just the sink, the toilet, the tub, and the mirror. I stared at my reflection. My face was pale, eyes wide with fear and confusion. And then I saw them, on the mirror, just above the sink. Fingerprints. Several of them. Smudged against the glass. Not mine. I hadn't touched the mirror there. My hands were clean. These prints were smudged, as if someone had leaned heavily against the mirror. Their fingers splayed. They were slightly distorted, elongated, as if they had slid down the glass. My blood ran cold. Click. The bathroom light hummed overhead, a sickly buzzing sound. Someone had been in here, in the bathroom, sobbing, leaning against the mirror, and they were gone. Or, unseen, the clerk's words came back to me. Didn't leave, not on his own anyway. The fear was no longer a prickle. It was a wave crashing over me, leaving me breathless and shaking. I was in a room where someone had died, and whatever was left of them was still here. Reliving it, trapped. I backed out of the bathroom slowly, never taking my eyes off the mirror, off the smudged fingerprints. I didn't turn off the light. Couldn't bear the thought of darkness in there. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, lights on, heart pounding at every creak, every groan of the old building. I kept watching the bathroom door, listening. The crying didn't return that night, but the feeling of being watched was intense, overwhelming, like cold eyes were on me constantly. The next morning, the sun was a welcome sight. I got dressed quickly, not even using the bathroom sink. I grabbed my bag and got out of room 9 as fast as I could. I dropped the key card off at the empty front desk. Didn't see the clerk, didn't care. I just needed to be gone. As I pulled out of the motel parking lot, I glanced back at the building, at the second floor, at the end of the hall, at room 9. The curtains were drawn. It looked just like all the other rooms, anonymous, harmless. But I knew what was inside. I drove for hours that day, putting as much distance as possible between me and that motel. I tried to rationalize it all away. Tiredness. Imagination. The fingerprints? Maybe they were old, missed by cleaning? The crying? Pipes? The room next door? Desperation breeds self-deception. But deep down I knew what I had heard, what I had seen. It's been a month since then. I'm back home, in my own apartment, miles and miles away from that town, that motel, room 9. I thought I was safe. Last night I was getting ready for bed, standing at the sink in my own bathroom, brushing my teeth. I finished, rinsed my mouth, and looked up at my reflection in the mirror, and I saw them, smudged against the glass, just above the sink, fingerprints, several of them, distorted, elongated, as if they had slid. Not mine. I hadn't touched the mirror there. My blood ran cold, my toothbrush clattered into the sink. And from behind me, from the direction of the shower curtain in my own bathroom, I heard it. faint, like it was coming from far away, but also right here. A soft, muffled sob. Room 9 wasn't just in that motel in Idaho. The last guest. They had checked out, and they had followed me home. The hum of the rented sedan was a hypnotic drone against the vast inky canvas of the Nevada desert. For Sarah, a graphic designer, trading the Seattle drizzle for a sun-baked gamble on a new job in Phoenix, the isolation was starting to prickle. 10 hours on the road, and the loneliness was a passenger she hadn't invited. The glowing sign of the Starlight Oasis Motel was less an oasis and more a surrender to exhaustion. It flickered, half the letters dark, a wounded beacon in the oppressive dark. The lobby smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation. Behind a scarred Formica counter stood the night clerk. He was tall, impossibly gaunt, his ill-fitting shirt hanging like a shroud on his skeletal frame. But it was his eyes that snared Sarah's breath, like polished river stones, dark, unblinking, and holding an intensity that felt like a physical touch. Checking in. His voice was a dry rasp, like sand across gravestones. Yes, just for the night. Sarah Miller. His eyes flickered down to her hand, then back to her face. Solo, Ms. Miller. Long way to be traveling alone. Long way to be traveling alone. Just heading to Phoenix, she offered, trying for breezy. Landing on brittle. Phoenix, he echoed, drawing out the syllables. Big city for a little lady. What takes you there? He tapped her driver's license, his long, bony finger lingering. Pretty picture. Pretty name. Each question felt less like small talk, and more like an interrogation, stripping layers of her anonymity. He handed her a key. Room 11, far end of the L-shaped building. Sleep tight, Sarah? The use of her first name, uninvited, sent a fresh shiver down her spine. Room 11 was a study in beige and faded hopes. The air was thick with the cloying scent of industrial cleaner and something else, something faintly metallic, like old blood. Sarah locked the deadbolt and jammed the flimsy chain. Exhaustion warred with a rising tide of unease. She peered through a slit in the heavy sun-bleached curtains. The parking lot was mostly empty, bathed in the sickly orange glow of a few sputtering lamps. And there he was, the clerk, standing by the wheezing ice machine, not facing it, but angled towards her section of the motel. His gaunt silhouette was unmistakable. As she watched, his head turned slowly, directly towards her window. Sarah recoiled, heart hammering, letting the curtain fall. Sleep was a fitful, shallow thing. Twice, she woke with a gasp, convinced she'd heard a soft, scraping sound at the door. Once, she swore she saw that lean shadow pass by the tiny gap in her curtains, lingering for a breath too long before moving on. The desert plays tricks on tired eyes, she told herself. He's just doing his rounds. But the image of his eyes, those depthless, consuming orbs, wouldn't fade. Morning brought a harsh, unforgiving sun. Sarah packed quickly, eager to put the Starlight Oasis behind her. As she opened her door, a small, dirt-caked plastic daisy lay on the grimy welcome mat. She hadn't seen it last night. Her stomach twisted. In the lobby, he was there again, a fixed point in her dawning nightmare. Leaving us so soon? His eyes held a hint of amusement. Hope you slept well. You looked a little restless when I passed by. Her blood ran cold. You passed by my room, just making sure all our guests are secure, he said, his lips twitching into something that wasn't quite a smile. That's a nice sedan you got. Easy to spot on these long roads. He knew her car. He'd seen her. The vague unease solidified into a knot of genuine fear. Back in her room, she checked her phone. No signal. The cheap motel phone on the nightstand was dead, the cord frayed. A wave of claustrophobia washed over her. She had to leave. Now, as she reached for her purse, her car keys slipped, skittering under the flimsy particle board dresser. Annoyed, Sarah knelt, reaching into the dusty gloom. Her fingers brushed against something flat, taped to the dresser's underside. Taped to the dresser's underside. Curious, she tugged it free. It was a Polaroid. The cheap instant film showed a woman asleep in a motel bed. Her bed. Her asleep, mouth slightly agape, vulnerable. The angle was from above, near the ceiling in the far corner of the room. Taken inside her locked room. A strangled gasp escaped her. Her eyes shot to the corner indicated in the photo. There, almost invisible against the dark wood-patterned wallpaper, was a pinprick, a tiny gleaming lens. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She wasn't just being watched. She was being catalogued, collected. This wasn't a random creep. This was calculated, predatory. She scrambled to her feet, flung open the door, and ran. He was there. Standing just outside, hand raised as if to knock. A thin, gleaming screwdriver in his other hand. His face was inches from hers. The riverstone eyes, now devoid of any pretense, burned with a cold, possessive light. Leaving without saying goodbye, Sarah. His voice was soft, chilling. I was just coming to make a small adjustment. For a better angle. He knew her name. He'd known it all along. He'd likely used her license information to find more. To make the violation more personal. "Get away from me," she screamed, raw terror giving her a desperate strength. He reached for her, his movements surprisingly fast. "Don't struggle. I have quite the collection. You'll fit right in." Sarah reacted purely on instinct. She lunged, shoving him hard against the doorframe. He stumbled, surprised by her ferocity. She didn't wait. She sprinted towards her car, her breath tearing through her lungs. The keys clutched so tightly they bit into her palm. Behind her, she heard his footsteps, not running, but a steady, deliberate pursuit, like a wolf, sure of its prey. Her hands shook violently as she fumbled with the car door, then the ignition. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. She slammed the gear into drive and stomped on the accelerator. Gravel spat from under her tires as she fishtailed out of the parking lot. In her rearview mirror, his gaunt silhouette stood motionless, watching her flee, shrinking with distance until he was just a dark smudge against the desolate landscape. She drove for 2 hours straight, adrenaline a bitter taste in her mouth, before pulling into a brightly lit gas station in a larger town. The police report felt like narrating a horror film. They were sympathetic but skeptical. An officer visited the Starlight Oasis later that day. The night clerk, they told her, was gone. The room was immaculate. No camera, no Polaroids. The owner, a disconnected voice from a property management company in another state, claimed the clerk was a recent hire. Paid cash, no records, probably used a fake name. He had vanished like a phantom. Years passed. Sarah moved, changed jobs, even changed her hair. She built a new life, but the cracks remained. She avoided isolated motels, installed extra locks, and never ever traveled alone after dark. The memory of his eyes, the Polaroid, the gaunt shadow lingering at her window. They were ghosts that therapy couldn't fully exorcise. Then, one crisp autumn evening 5 years later, in a bustling Chicago street market, thousands of miles from that desert nightmare, she saw him. Across a crowded thoroughfare, amidst a sea of faces, a tall, gaunt man turned. For a heart-stopping second, his eyes, those same polished, unblinking obsidian orbs, met hers. A flicker of recognition, cold and absolute. He gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. Then, he melted into the throng, gone as quickly as he'd appeared. Was it him? Or was her mind forever scarred, conjuring his image from the features of a stranger? The ambiguity was its own prison. Sarah would never know, and that, perhaps, was the truest horror of all. The night clerk from the Starlight Oasis might still be out there, collecting his silent, terrifying trophies, his unnerving stare forever imprinted on her soul, a silhouette lingering just at the edge of her vision. The neon sign of the Stillwater Creek Motel sputtered, casting a diseased pink glow over the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. One more hour, I told myself. Just one more hour of Louisiana backroads before finding a decent place. But the swampy darkness had swallowed the highway whole, and my eyelids felt like lead weights. Liam, my editor, wanted bayou shots, the raw, untouched kind. And I, Alex Mercer, wildlife photographer with a penchant for solitude, had been happy to oblige. Now all I wanted was a bed that didn't fight back. The lobby smelled of damp wool and old coffee. A stoic man with eyes like faded denim pushed a registration card towards me. Room 12. The quiet here wasn't peaceful. It was expectant, like the air before a thunderstorm. The moment I pushed open the door to room 12, it hit me. Not the usual motel funk of stale smoke and cheap disinfectant. This was different. A harsh chemical bite, acrid and sharp, like industrial cleaner trying to mask something deeply unpleasant. It pricked at my nostrils, making my eyes water. Beneath it, a cloying sweetness like overripe fruit, and something metallic. My stomach gave a little lurch. Just tired, I thought, dropping my camera bag onto the suspiciously clean-looking, but stiff, patterned bedspread. I wrestled with the window, managing to crack it open an inch. The screen was ripped, a jagged mouth gaping into the humid night. The air conditioner wheezed to life with a rattling cough, but it only seemed to churn the chemical odor, making it thicker. I noticed odd details. The top of the cheap laminate dresser was almost gleaming, yet the space beneath it was caked in dust. The Gideon Bible on the nightstand had a sticky, dark ring on its cover. My bag, unbalanced, slid off the bed with a soft thud. Annoyed, I bent to retrieve it, my fingers sweeping under the bedskirt, brushed against something small, cylindrical, and cold. I recoiled for a second, then curiosity overriding the nascent unease. I pulled it out. It was a syringe. The plastic casing was grimy, but the needle, thin as a wasp's stinger, glinted in the dim lamplight. Used. My breath caught. This wasn't just a dirty room. This felt contaminated. My skin crawled. My first instinct was to call the front desk, demand another room. But the image of the clerk's impassive face, the motel's deep isolation, made me hesitate. What if this was just the tip of something uglier? I wrapped the syringe carefully in a handful of coarse toilet paper, my heart thudding in nervous rhythm against my ribs. Sneaking out, I scanned the shadowed parking lot, then shoved the bundle deep into the overflowing dumpster near the ice machine. The metal lid clanging shut with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the stillness. Back in room 12, the chemical smell was a physical presence, clinging to the back of my throat. I wedged the flimsy chain lock into place. Every creak of the building, every rustle of unseen creatures in the overgrown brush outside seemed magnified. I sat on the edge of the bed. The image of that needle seared into my mind. Who had used it? For what? And why leave it here? The silence pressed in, heavy and watchful. Sleep was impossible. I lay there, eyes wide in the dark, my ears straining. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A car. Engine cut too soon, coasting into the parking lot. Doors opened and closed with a stealthy softness. Muffled voices, low and indistinct, drifted from somewhere near my end of the building. They sounded close, too close. My pulse quickened. Were they guests or something else? The chemical smell in the room suddenly felt more sinister, less like poor housekeeping, and more like a deliberate attempt to erase something. Then, a floorboard creaked in the narrow corridor outside my door. My entire body tensed. I held my breath, listening. Another creak, slower this time, stopping right outside. I could almost feel a presence on the other side of the thin wood. My gaze was locked on the doorknob. It began to turn, infinitesimally slowly, a fraction of an inch. Then it stopped. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. A whisper, so low I almost didn't catch it, seeping from under the door like a noxious gas. Raspy, urgent. He's still here. My blood turned to ice. Another voice, sharper, more guttural, replied, equally hushed. Check again. Quiet. He? Who were they talking about? My mind raced. Was there someone else in the room? Had someone been in here before me, and these men were looking for him? Or did they think I was this he? A soft, metallic scrape startled me. The sound of something thin, like a credit card or a lockpick, being slid into the gap between the door and the frame. They were trying to get in. Panic, raw and electrifying, surged through me. The chair. I lunged for the flimsy desk chair, jamming it under the doorknob, my hands slick with sweat. The scraping stopped. An unnerving silence, then a heavy, frustrated thud against the door. It shuddered in its frame. They were going to force it. There was no time. My eyes darted to the window. The small, cracked pane I'd managed to open earlier. It was my only way out. Adrenaline dumped into my system. I grabbed my heaviest tripod from my camera bag, a clumsy, inadequate weapon. Another thought, harder this time. Wood splintered. I didn't think. I swung the tripod, smashing the remaining glass of the openable window section. The sound was explosive in the small room. Shards rained down. I scrambled through the jagged opening, tearing my shirt, my arms screaming as a piece of glass raked across it. Behind me, I heard the unmistakable crack of the motel room door giving way. I hit the damp earth and ran, plunging into the tangled darkness behind the motel. Branches whipped my face. Roots threatened to trip me. I risked a glance back. Two silhouettes, bulky and menacing, were framed in the light spilling from my ravaged room. One of them raised an arm, pointing directly at me. The highway. I had to reach the highway. My lungs burned, fear a coppery taste in my mouth. Finally, blessedly, I stumbled onto the gritty shoulder of the road, waving my arms frantically at a pair of approaching headlights. A trucker, a big man named Earl with kind eyes, pulled over. My story tumbled out, breathless and disjointed. The smell, the syringe, the whispers, the door. He listened, his brow furrowed, then got on his CB, his voice a calm rumble calling for the sheriff. The deputies who met us at the next town were polite, but looked at me like I'd seen a ghost or maybe just had too much to drink. They checked the Stillwater Creek Motel. Room 12 was empty. The broken window, the only sign of disturbance. The chemical smell, they said, was faint, probably just strong cleaner. The syringe was gone from the dumpster. The night clerk, woken from a doze, claimed he had heard nothing, seen no one unusual. There was no he, no proof, just my frantic story and a bleeding arm. Years have passed. I still take pictures, but the deep, isolated places have lost their allure. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I catch a phantom whiff of those chemicals, sharp and sickly sweet. I see a news report, a meth lab bust in a rundown motel, an unsolved disappearance in a forgotten stretch of swampland, and a cold dread will settle in my stomach. I never found out who he was, or if those men ever found what they were looking for in room 12. The not knowing is its own kind of haunting. And dice, always insert you. But the whisper, he's still here, echoes in the quietest corners of my memory. A chilling reminder of the night, the ordinary brushed up against something terrifyingly real, and the lingering, unanswered question of what or who I'd truly stumbled upon in that room that smelled so terribly wrong. Dust swirled across the empty highway, glowing red in my taillights. I was halfway through Texas, driving home from a work conference in Austin, when exhaustion hit like a brick. My eyes burned, and the radio static was my only company. A neon sign flickered ahead. Starlight Motel, vacancy. It was a squat, L-shaped building, paint peeling, with a gravel lot and a buzzing Coke machine. I didn't care. I just needed a bed. The clerk, a wiry guy named Dale with a stained cowboy's cap, handed me a key to room 12. His fingers were nicotine yellow, and he barely looked up from his crossword. Quiet night, he muttered. Keep it that way. I nodded, too tired to chat, and dragged my suitcase to the room. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap pine cleaner. The bed sagged, but it was mine for the night. At midnight, a scream tore through the wall, high-pitched, raw, like someone was begging. It came from room 11 next door. My heart jackhammered. Another scream, then words, muffled, frantic. Please, don't. A man's voice growled back low and sharp, but I couldn't make it out. I fumbled for my phone, hand shaking, and dialed 911. Someone's being hurt, I whispered to the operator, giving the motel's address. Hurry. The screams stopped, replaced by a heavy thump, like something hitting the floor. Then, silence, thick and wrong. I pressed my ear to the wall, but all I heard was my own pulse. Sirens wailed 10 minutes later. 2 cops, one burly with a buzz cut, the other slim and all business, knocked on my door. I told them everything, pointing at room 11's door. Its faded blue paint chipped. The burly cop banged on it. No answer. Dale shuffled over, keys jangling, and unlocked it. The room was empty. Bed made, no bags, no signs of a struggle. The air was sterile. like it hadn't been touched in weeks. Nobody's been in 11 for days, Dale said, scratching his neck. You sure you heard it from there? I know what I heard. I snapped, but doubt crept in. The cops exchanged looks, like I was some city idiot spooked by the wind. They checked the room again, found nothing, and left, telling me to call if anything else happened. Dale locked room 11 and shuffled back to his office, muttering about damn noise complaints. I didn't sleep. The silence was worse than the screams, heavy with questions. Had I imagined it? No. Those cries were real, etched into my bones. I double-checked my door's lock, the chain rattling in my shaky hands. The room felt smaller, the walls closer. A faint scratching came from the vent above the bed, like fingernails on metal. I told myself it was a rat. Had to be. Morning came, gray and humid. I went to lock my door, but the knob turned too easily. Unlocked. My stomach dropped. I checked it twice before bed. Someone had been in my room. Nothing was missing, but the air felt touched. A faint chemical smell lingered, like bleach, sharp and wrong. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the office. Dale was there, sipping coffee, his crossword half done. Checking out? He asked. Not looking up. Someone was in my room. I said. The door was unlocked. He frowned, eyes narrowing. You must be forgot. Nobody's got keys but me. His voice was flat, but his fingers tightened on his pen. I didn't buy it. I paid it and left, my skin crawling as I walked to my car. The lot was empty except for a rusted pickup parked near room 11. It hadn't been there last night. I drove off, but the screams stayed with me. At a gas station an hour away, I searched the motel online. A local news article popped up. Starlight Motel, 2019. Missing woman. A 28-year-old named Emily Roos had vanished after staying there. Her car was found in the lot, but her room 11, was empty, bed made, no suspects. Another article mentioned a drifter, last seen near the motel, never found. My hands went cold. The drifter's description matched Dale. Wiry, late 40s, stained cap. I called the police again, telling them about the screams, the unlocked door, the articles. They promised to look into it, but their tone was skeptical, like I was chasing shadows. That night in a different motel, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The chemical smell followed me, faint but there, like it had soaked into my clothes. Days later, I got a call from a detective. I'd searched the Starlight again. Under room 11's floorboards, they found scratches, blood stains, and a woman's earring. Not Emily's, but fresh, maybe a week old. Dale was gone, his office empty, the pickup missing. The detective said they were tracking him, but his voice was grim, like he knew Dale was smoke in the wind. I don't stay in motels anymore. I drive through the night, windows up, doors locked. But sometimes when it's quiet, I hear that scream, sharp and desperate, and I see Dale's face, his pen twitching, his eyes hiding something hungry. Last week I found a motel receipt in my glove box. Starlight, room 12, my name. I burned it, but the chemical smell won't leave. Neither will the feeling that someone's still out there, waiting for the next guest to disappear. The Oklahoma wind, relentless and gritty, buffeted my old sedan as the last sliver of sun bled below the flat horizon. Another 10 hours on the road, another greasy diner meal settling in my stomach. I was Mark Brewer, a software salesman chasing a new territory, and all I craved was a shower and a bed that didn't feel like a slab of concrete. The Prairie Schooner Inn sign flickered erratically, half its neon letters dark, promising little more than basic shelter. It was the only light for miles. The lobby was a time capsule from the 70s, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and something vaguely chemical, like old industrial cleaner. Behind the counter, a man who looked like had been carved from dried leather slowly raised his eyes. They were pale, almost colorless, and held a disturbing stillness. Checking in, his voice was a low rasp, like gravel shifting. Yeah, just for the night. Mark Brewer. He slid a registration card across the scarred formica. Room 7. Down the end. No smile, no welcome. Just a silent, measuring gaze that lingered a moment too long. The air in the lobby felt heavy, expectant. Room 7 was what you'd expect for $39.99 a night. A saggy double bed with a faded geometric pattern quilt, a particle board desk, and art that looked like it had been rescued from a dumpster. A faint metallic tang hung in the air, almost masked by the cloying scent of cheap air freshener. I dropped my overnight bag, kicked off my shoes, and immediately tripped, my foot catching on a loose flap of the worn, rust-colored carpet near the bed. Cursing under my breath, I bent down to smooth it. The edge of the carpet lifted easily, too easily. Curiosity, or maybe just a road-weary desire for distraction, made me peel it back further. My breath hitched. Underneath, on the stained, pale concrete subfloor, was a dark, irregular patch. It was large, maybe 2 feet across, and disturbingly organic in shape. My heart began a slow, heavy thud. Old paint spill? I told myself, maybe oil from a leaky engine part someone brought in. I reached out a hesitant finger, touched the edge of the stain. It wasn't fully dry. There was a slight disturbing tackiness to it. I brought my fingertip to my nose. The faint metallic tang I'd noticed in the air was stronger here, mixed with something else. A coppery, almost sweetish odor. Blood. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The room suddenly felt colder, the shadows deeper. My mind raced, trying to find a harmless explanation. But the smell, that specific, sickeningly familiar smell from a long-ago biology class, wouldn't be denied. My first instinct was the phone on the nightstand. I snatched it up. Dead. The line was completely silent. My stomach twisted. I fumbled for my cell, my fingers clumsy. The signal was weak, 1 bar flickering uncertainly. I called the motel's main number, listening to it ring faintly from the direction of the lobby. Parishguna. The clerk's gravelly voice answered, devoid of any inflection. Hi. It's Mark Brewer, room 7. There's a really bad stain under the carpet here. It looks like, well, it smells like blood. I need another room. A pause. Then, probably just some rust, sir. Or maybe some old paint. We're booked solid tonight. His voice was flat, dismissive, offering no concern, no apology. Just a dead end. No, this isn't rust, I insisted, my voice rising despite myself. It really doesn't look good. Can you at least come and see? Like I said, we're full. And I'm the only one on. Can't leave the desk. Click. He hung up. A cold dread began to seep into me. He didn't care. Or worse, he knew. I carefully laid the carpet back down. But the image of that dark, damning stain was burned into my retinas. I was standing in a room where something terrible had likely happened. And I was trapped. Sleep was out of the question. I wedged the room's only flimsy chair under the doorknob and lay on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the old building, every gust of wind rattling the cheap window pane, sounded like a footstep, a threat. The coppery scent seemed to grow stronger, filling my nostrils, my lungs. It must have been after midnight when I heard it. A soft, stealthy scrape at the door. Not a knock. More like something being slid against the wood. I froze, every nerve ending screaming. The scraping stopped. Then, with excruciating slowness, the doorknob began to turn. I watched, mesmerized with horror, as the cheap metal twisted, straining against the chair I'd jammed beneath it. The deadbolt, which I'd thrown earlier, groaned under pressure. Who is it? I managed to croak, my voice barely a whisper. Silence. Then a low, guttural mumble from the other side, too indistinct to make out words, but undeniably there. It wasn't the clerk's raspy tone. This was someone else. They were trying to be quiet, trying to get in without alerting me. My blood ran cold. They knew I was in here. They knew I'd found something. Adrenaline surged. I scrambled off the bed, my mind racing for an escape, for a weapon. The window. It was an old, single-pane sash window, painted shut countless times. A sudden, violent thud against the door. Wood splintered near the lock. The chair skittered. They were going to break it down. My eyes landed on the heavy glass water pitcher and tumbler on the desk. My only conceivable weapon. I grabbed the pitcher, its weight surprisingly reassuring in my trembling hand. Another crack from the door, louder this time. Then, simultaneously, The window behind the thin, yellowed curtains exploded inwards in a shower of glass. A dark figure, silhouetted against the faint parking lot light, was already halfway through the shattered opening. Not the clerk. This man was bulkier, his face obscured by shadow and the glint of something metallic in his hand. At the same moment, the motel room door burst open with a final, violent splintering of wood, and the gaunt clerk, Silas, stood framed in the doorway, his pale eyes burning with a chilling intensity. He held a tire iron. They weren't just trying to scare me. They were trying to silence me. Pure survival instinct took over. As the figure from the window lunged, I swung the heavy water pitcher with all my might. It connected with the side of his head with a sickening, wet crunch. He grunted, stumbled back through the broken window, momentarily dazed. I didn't wait. I threw myself towards the now open doorway, Silas blocking the path. Tire iron raised. I feinted left, then ducked right, shoving past him with a desperate surge of strength, his foul breath hot on my neck. I burst out into the cold night air, sprinting towards my car, fumbling for the keys. Footsteps pounded behind me, both of them, recovering quickly. My fingers closed around the keys. I jammed one into the lock, flung the door open, threw myself inside. The engine roared to life on the second try. Tires screamed on the gravel as I slammed the gear into reverse, then fishtailed onto the dark access road. In the rearview mirror, two dark shapes stood watching, swallowed almost instantly by the oppressive Oklahoma darkness. I drove for what felt like an eternity, my heart hammering, until I saw the blessed blue and red lights of a state trooper parked by the highway. My story, gasped out between ragged breaths, sounded insane even to my own ears. The troopers were thorough. They found the stain, confirming it was blood. They found the shattered window, the splintered door. But Silas and his accomplice were gone. Vanished. The Prairie Schooner Inn was empty, save for the ghosts of whatever horrors its cheap walls had witnessed. They found signs the room had been hastily, but not entirely, wiped down recently. Someone had been there. They never caught them. Sometimes I see news articles about unsolved crimes in desolate places. Bodies found months later in shallow graves off forgotten highways. I wonder if one of them is connected to Room 7. Years later, I still can't enter a motel room without a knot of ice forming in my stomach. I always check under the carpet. I always listen for the scrape at the door. The coppery scent of old blood is a phantom that revisits me in nightmares. I wasn't just a guest at the Prairie Schooner Inn. I was an accidental witness who almost became another secret buried beneath its stained and silent floors. And I know with a certainty that chills me to the bone that they're still out there, and they know I saw. The headlights of my Corolla cut through the darkness of Highway 285, illuminating nothing but empty road and the occasional reflective eyes of desert creatures. My GPS had died somewhere outside Roswell, and the last gas station attendant had given me directions that now seemed increasingly suspect. As the digital clock on my dashboard hit 11:47 p.m., the blue neon sign of the Desert Mirage Motel emerged like a ghost from the blackness. I hadn't planned on stopping in Chavez County. This road trip from Dallas to San Diego was supposed to be straightforward, a simple 3-day drive before starting my new job. But the unexpected detour through southern New Mexico had eaten up hours, and my eyelids were growing heavy. The motel parking lot was nearly empty, just 3 other vehicles scattered across cracked asphalt. One was a dusty pickup with Texas plates like mine. The office bell jingled as I pushed open the door. Behind the counter sat a man in his 60s, weathered skin and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His name tag read Earl. "Room for one?" he asked, not looking up from his crossword puzzle. "Just for tonight," I said, sliding my credit card across the counter. His eyes flicked to my card, then to my face, then to the parking lot visible through the grimy window. Something shifted in his expression. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper as he processed my payment. "Don't go out after dark. Not tonight." I chuckled nervously. "Why's that?" Earl didn't smile back. He handed me a key, an actual metal key, not a key card, attached to a plastic fob with 14 etched into it. "Just some local trouble. Nothing to worry about if you stay inside." He pointed through a side window toward a row of rooms. "You're down at the end." As I turned to leave, I noticed a police bulletin board near the door. Missing persons posters, mostly. One showed a smiling college-age guy with the same haircut as mine. I grabbed my overnight bag from the trunk, feeling a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Across the lot, near the ice machine, 3 men were standing in a loose circle, smoking in the dim light. I could see they were watching me, or more specifically, watching my car. My Toyota still had the Al's Auto Sales, Dallas license plate frame, and a half-visible rental barcode in the window. One man nudged another, nodding in my direction. I quickened my pace to room 14, fumbling with the key. Once inside, I double-locked the door and secured the chain. The room smelled of cigarettes masked by chemical cleaner. 2 queen beds, a TV at least 15 years old, water stains on the ceiling that resembled continents. The bathroom light flickered in seizure-inducing pulses. Just one night, I told myself. I'll be gone by sunrise. I tried calling my girlfriend, Katie, but there was no cell service. The Wi-Fi password scrawled on a laminated card by the phone didn't work either. Perfect isolation. Sleep came fitfully. Around 3 a.m., I jolted awake to the sound of footsteps on gravel outside my window. The thin curtains did little to block the exterior light, and I could see shadows moving past. Voices murmured. Low, masculine tones discussing something in hushed urgency. Third one this month. Texas plates again. Earl said room 14. My heart slammed against my ribcage. I reached for my phone instinctively before remembering it was useless. The footsteps circled my room, pausing at my door. The handle jiggled. Once, twice. The chain lock rattled but held. After what felt like hours, the footsteps retreated. I lay awake until first light, clutching the motel room's ice bucket like a weapon. When dawn finally broke, I peered through the curtains. My car was still there, seemingly untouched. I packed quickly, desperate to put this place behind me. As I opened my door, my heart stopped. The entire contents of my glove compartment were scattered across the welcome mat. Insurance papers, registration maintenance records, and pinned beneath a rock was a handwritten note. You were warned. Next time we won't just look. I snatched everything up and rushed to my car. The driver's side lock had been picked so cleanly, I wouldn't have noticed if not for the slight scratch marks. Inside, the car appeared untouched, except for the open glove box. My heart raced as I turned the key, half expecting the engine not to start. It roared to life, and I peeled out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I glimpsed Earl watching from the office doorway, his face impassive. Next to him stood one of the men from the night before. 20 miles down the highway, my phone suddenly chimed with dozens of delayed notifications. Service had returned. I pulled over at a busy truck stop, crowds, witnesses, safety, and called Katie. Babe, thank God, I said when she answered. You won't believe the night I had. Mark, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all night. I got stuck at this creepy motel in the middle of nowhere. No service. Which one? Her voice sounded strange, tight. Desert Mirage, off 285 in Chavez County. Why a long silence. Mark, I need you to listen carefully. My brother works for the state police. That area. There's been a string of robberies targeting out-of-state drivers. They isolate you. Go through your things. Sometimes worse. My mouth went dry. How much worse? 3 people have disappeared in the last year. All stopped at motels along that stretch. All drove cars with out-of-state plates. She paused. The last guy was driving a blue Corolla. Just like yours, ice water seemed to replace the blood in my veins. I'm getting out of here. I'll call you when I reach Carlsbad. Mark, wait, there's something else. The Desert Mirage Motel was condemned 2 years ago. It's been closed since 2023. I nearly dropped the phone. That's impossible. I just stayed there. The clerk's name was Earl. There were other guests. Mark, please, just stay where you are. My brother can send someone. I have to go, I said, suddenly aware of a truck that had pulled in beside me. A dusty pickup with familiar faces inside. The same men from the motel. The driver met my eyes and smiled. I threw the car into drive and sped away, tires squealing. In my rearview mirror, the pickup pulled out to follow. My phone rang again. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered on speaker. Hello, Mark. It was Earl's voice. "I see you're still in the area. I did warn you not to go out after dark, but I should have mentioned, around here, the darkness follows certain people. What do you want?" I demanded, watching the pickup gaining in my mirror. "Nothing you'll miss for long," Earl said. "Just stopping by to finish checking you out." The call ended. The pickup was right behind me now, close enough that I could see the driver's cold smile. I pressed harder on the accelerator, the speedometer climbing past 90. That's when I saw it in the distance, a blue neon sign flickering in broad daylight. Desert Mirage Motel. The same motel I thought I'd left behind, but that was impossible. I had been driving away for nearly 30 minutes, unless I hadn't left at all. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The truck behind me flashed its lights. In the passenger seat, I could now clearly see the face of the college-aged guy from the missing person poster. My car's engine suddenly sputtered. The gas gauge, which had shown half full, now read empty. As the Corolla slowed, the pickup pulled alongside me. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Earl behind the wheel. "Room 14 is always open," he called over. "In fact, you never really checked out." My car rolled to a stop directly in front of the Desert Mirage Motel. The sign flickered once, twice, then steadied. Room 14's door swung open on its own. Inside, I could see a perfect replica of my overnight bag sitting on the bed. Next to it lay my phone, wallet, and keys. My mouth went dry as I realized those weren't replicas, they were mine, which meant that the pickup doors opened. Earl and his companion stepped out, but they looked different now. Their edges blurred, their movements too fluid. "Don't worry," Earl said, his voice no longer human. "Everyone feels confused at first, but you'll get used to it." After all we did, as they approached, I noticed something else. Behind them stretched an endless row of identical cars with out-of-state plates. And behind those, an impossible number of room doors, each marked with the number 14. My last thought before they reached me was of Katie's words. The Desert Mirage Motel was condemned 2 years ago. I was checking into a place that didn't exist, and now, neither did I. 3 months later, a blue Corolla with California plates pulled into the Desert Mirage Motel just after midnight. A young woman stepped out, exhausted from driving. Behind the counter, I smiled as she approached. "Room for one?" I asked, not looking up from my crossword puzzle. She nodded, sliding her credit card across the counter. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper as I processed her payment. "Listen," I said, feeling the others gathering outside, ready to welcome our newest guest. "Don't go out after dark. Not tonight." She'd ignore the warning, of course. They always do. The doors are locked. The no vacancy sign perhaps lit once more. 7 rooms, 7 lingering chills. Did you feel the thin walls closing in? The eyes from the darkened window? The lingering scent of something? Not quite right. We promised you a journey into authentic dread. And these establishments, these temporary shelters for the lost and the desperate, rarely disappoint. The true twist, perhaps, is how easily the mundane can curdle into the monstrous, right under the flickering neon glow. Which room's echoes will haunt your thoughts tonight? Which story made you double-check your own logs? Or perhaps reconsider your next road trip? Confess your fears, your favorite unsettling detail, in the comments below. Your nightmares are welcome here. If this descent into the grim reality of motel horror has left its mark, then subscribe to Nightmare True Horror. Illuminate that like button like a lone, brave porch light, guiding other seekers of the truly terrifying to our door.